sir. I can get your wife walking again," the boy said. His tone didn't wobble, but the man in the tailored charcoal coat stopped mid-stride. Wind ripped through Denver's rehab center parking lot, sweeping dry leaves across the pavement. Caleb Sterling turned slowly, like the sentence had hands. In his arms, Marina lay still under a blanket, and for a moment the whole world shrank to that promise. Marina's slender frame was wrapped in thick wool, yet beneath it she wore pale ocean blue silk that shimmered when light touched it. Her eyes stayed half closed, as if she were trying to vanish into sleep or into the years before the crash. 2 years after the accident, after pain, weight loss, and endless therapy, she was still breathtaking. A quiet grace that time couldn't bruise. Her cheekbones still looked carved. Her lips were soft and pale against the cold. Caleb loved her with a fierceness that startled him. She'd been the fire in his calculated life, the dancer who made boardrooms feel slow. Now she was all he fought for. The boy couldn't be more than 11, drowned in an oversized jacket, one sneaker patched with duct tape, a red beanie pulled down near his eyebrows. He'd been sitting cross-legged on a flattened cereal box by the entryway, a beat-up sketchpad on his lap. Caleb stared. "What did you say?" The boy stood and tucked the pad under one arm, eyes calm. "I can help her walk again." Caleb tightened his hold. Marina's fingers twitched weakly at his collar, like she was telling him to breathe, but her eyes never opened. Caleb glanced around. No cameras, no press, only engine hum and the bitter smell of hospital coffee. This had to be a cruel joke. "I don't have time," he muttered, stepping toward the doors. "I don't want your money," the boy added. Caleb stopped. Then Marina's voice scraped out, soft and dry. "What's going on?" Caleb answered too fast. "Nothing. Just a kid messing around." The boy moved closer, palms open. "1 hour," he said. "That's all I'm asking. Let me try." Caleb's jaw clenched. He'd dealt with fake charities, reporters posing as baristas, and people who hunted his name for clout. But this kid didn't look like he wanted attention. If anything, he looked like he'd rather disappear tonight. And somehow, that made the offer feel heavier. Caleb turned and marched inside with sudden purpose. He didn't look back, but the words followed him. Into the elevator, down bright white corridors, past nurses who didn't know his private war. All afternoon the sentence clung to him, louder than polite doctors and their careful, "maybe someday." By night, it still echoed, the kind of sound you can't unhear once it finds a crack. That night, Caleb sat alone in his study, lights dimmed to tired amber. Outside, snow dusted the treetops along Crestview Drive. A bourbon rested in his hand, untouched. Across the room, Marina curled beneath a heated blanket on the couch, the hem of her ocean blue dress peeking near her ankles. The television glowed silently, like even sound would be disrespectful to the fragile peace between them. Marina's legs, once the strength behind a decade of ballet at the Paramount, lay unmoving and pale beneath the blanket's edge. Caleb watched her fingers drift over a photo, the two of them at the Grand Canyon, 10 years younger, sun in their faces. "You're staring," she murmured. Caleb blinked. "Just thinking about that boy." Marina's mouth lifted faintly. "How did I know? I wasn't asleep. I heard him." "His voice," Marina said. "It reminded me of someone." Caleb leaned forward. "You don't believe him, do you?" She gave a thin smile. "No, but he believed it." "That's what I heard." Caleb rose and paced to the window. "You think I haven't tried everything?" he muttered. Marina didn't argue. She let the words hang until the anger softened into exhaustion. the kind that sits behind the eyes. I think you're tired, Marina whispered. Caleb turned. I'm tired of hoping, tired of false starts, tired of watching you get hurt every time they say nothing's changed. She stayed quiet, then said, gentle but stubborn, So, what's one more hour? Caleb didn't answer, yet something inside him loosened, just enough to let possibility slip in, dangerous as a spark near gasoline. For once, he listened. The next morning, just after 10, Caleb parked near a quiet corner of Harrington Park. He hadn't told Marina where they were going. He simply wheeled her to the far side of an empty basketball court. Under a rusted oak, the boy was already waiting, sketchpad beside him, a small towel folded on the bench. He looked up without surprise and nodded once. Thank you for coming, he said. Caleb didn't speak. Marina's eyes narrowed, more curious than hopeful. What's your name? She asked. Rowan, he said. Okay, Rowan, Marina replied softly. Show us. Caleb crossed his arms, already regretting the trip, but Marina's tone, hope wrapped in skepticism, kept him there. Rowan opened his bag and pulled out a warm cloth bundle that smelled faintly of cinnamon, like a kitchen, not a clinic. 1 hour, Rowan repeated. Caleb looked down at Marina. She gave the faintest nod. Then begin, Caleb said. Rowan knelt on the towel and unzipped his duffel. Out came thick socks, a tennis ball, a folded hand towel, and a soft pouch filled with warm grains. He lined them up neatly, like tools with a purpose. Caleb watched for a trick and found only careful preparation. Rowan laid the warm pouch across Marina's thighs. Loosens the muscles, he said. It's just rice. Marina flinched. He pulled back instantly. Too hot? She shook her head. No, I just haven't felt warmth there in a long time. Caleb's shoulders tightened. Rowan nodded as if that meant her body was listening. If you believe in miracles, type 1. If you don't, type 2. Either way, stay close. After a few breaths, Rowan began rotating Marina's leg in small, measured circles, never forcing. His hands were steady, practiced, attentive. Marina blinked. You learned this from your mom? Rowan nodded. She worked at a shelter clinic, helped people who couldn't afford therapy, veterans mostly. Caleb's arms stayed crossed, but his suspicion shifted. For the first time, he wasn't looking at Rowan like a problem. He was watching him work. And she taught you? Caleb asked. Rowan kept his eyes on Marina's knee. She said bodies don't always need machines. Sometimes they need someone who won't give up. He spoke mostly to Marina, asking what music she danced to, what food she missed, what made her laugh. Her answers started clipped, but warmth crept in. The park air, the sunlight, the lack of wires, everything felt softer than a therapy room. I used to make lemon pasta, Marina murmured, with roasted shrimp. Caleb's mouth twitched. He tried copying it once and set off the fire alarm, she added. Rowan smiled. Sounds like me. Marina laughed, small and startled, and Caleb felt it like a punch. Rowan tapped her knee. Do you feel that? Marina focused. Maybe. Pressure. Rowan glanced up. That's good, right there. Rowan guided Marina to flex her ankle and told her to imagine a signal traveling from hip to toes like a letter down a long hallway. She tried. Nothing moved, but she didn't fold. Trying matters, Rowan said. Caleb watched how Rowan paused whenever Marina's breath shifted, never forcing. Wind and birds replaced beeping machines. It felt strange, but also like the first honest attempt in years. They continued in patient repetition until the hour thinned out. Rowan showed the movement again, slower, as if persuasion worked better than commands. When time was up, he began packing. "Next week," he said. "Your muscles remember. We just have to help them speak." Caleb cleared his throat. "We're not making promises." Rowan nodded. "Neither am I. I'm just trying." Marina's smile, small and real, answered for both of them. Rowan backed away, giving space, and Caleb wheeled Marina toward the SUV without a word. In the rearview mirror, he saw Rowan sit back down on the bench, sketchpad open, drawing like nothing unusual had happened. But something had shifted. Marina's laugh kept echoing in Caleb's head, and he hated how much he needed it. He still didn't thank the boy. He simply drove home in silence, carrying a new kind of weight. That night, Marina sat by the window, quiet through dinner. Caleb watched her, unsure what to say. Finally, she whispered, "I want to go back next week." He hesitated, then nodded. "Do you think I'm crazy?" she asked. Caleb shook his head. "No, I think we both stopped believing anything could change." Marina's smile trembled. "Then maybe that's what has to change first." Caleb barely slept. Not from worry, from feeling. Numbness didn't win, and that scared him. The next Sunday came crisp, pale sun low over Harrington Park. Caleb parked under the same sycamore. Marina wore a cream blouse and gray slacks, hair twisted back, calm but guarded. Rowan waited beneath the oak, towel laid out, as if their return had always been part of his plan. Rowan stood when he saw them, a small smile flickering. "You came back," he said. Caleb gave a tight nod. "We said we would." Marina smiled gently. "Good morning, Rowan." "Morning, ma'am." Caleb helped Marina into the wheelchair and rolled her onto the towel. Rowan unpacked. Rice pack, tennis ball, towel, lotion. Hands moving with quiet routine, like he'd practiced this in his head all week. "Lavender," Marina noted as Rowan opened the lotion. Rowan nodded. "Mom said it calms nerves. The body can't heal if the mind is panicking." He massaged slow circles into her knees. Marina closed her eyes, surrendering to the warmth. Caleb stood nearby, arms crossed, tracking every move. Rowan asked about music. Marina answered with fragments. Tchaikovsky, old R&B, the rhythms she used to count on stage. The talk softened the air. Rowan asked, "Do you ever picture walking again?" Marina opened her eyes. "Every night and every morning, I remember. I can't." Rowan looked down. "Mom said the body remembers even when the world forgets." He tapped her shin. "Can you feel that?" Marina concentrated, not clearly, like knocking in another room. Rowan whispered, "Then let's open the door." Caleb swallowed, surprised by how much that line hit him. For 40 minutes, Rowan guided new stretches. He had Marina try to curl her toes, if only in intention, and picture muscles answering like they once did on stage. Her brow furrowed. Nothing visible happened. Rowan didn't flinch. "Trying matters," he said. "Every signal is a message, even if it's delayed." Near the end, he pressed her knee. Marina paused, then said, "It felt like warmth." Rowan smiled. "That's a start." Caleb stepped forward. "You ever think of doing this for a living?" Rowan shrugged. "I used to, before life went the way it went." As he packed, Caleb asked where he went afterward. "Around," Rowan said, shoulders tight. "You live with someone?" A pause. "Sometimes." Marina's eyes softened. As Rowan turned to leave, she called, "You catch people before they fall." Rowan held her gaze. "Then I'm in the right place," he said. That night, Caleb stood in the kitchen drying a dish he'd already dried twice. In the living room, Marina hummed Swan Lake under her breath, fingers keeping time in the air. Caleb watched her face, lighter than it had been in months. She smiled again today, he said into the quiet. After a beat, he added, almost shocked, "So did I." The words felt risky, like admitting he still wanted a future. The fourth Sunday came colder, gray clouds low over Denver. Harrington Park looked emptier, swings creaked, and the court shone wet from drizzle. Caleb pulled up slowly, eyes on the oak. Rowan was there, duffel at his feet, hands tucked into sleeves, but he looked smaller, like the week had leaned on him. Caleb helped Marina out with practiced care. She wore a knit shawl and wool pants, gloved hands folded neatly. As Caleb wheeled Marina across the damp pavement, she whispered, "He doesn't look well." Caleb nodded. "Neither do you." Marina gave a faint smile. "Then we're even." Rowan stood and brushed wet leaves off the towel. "Sorry," he said. "Had to heat the rice pack at the gas station microwave." Marina's voice stayed gentle. "We're just glad you're here." Rowan knelt, hands moving slower than usual, and the air felt heavy. Rowan started the basic stretches in silence. Marina stayed quiet too, breathing carefully. After a few minutes, she asked, "Are you okay?" Rowan paused. "Yeah, just tired." Caleb squinted. "You sure?" Rowan nodded once. "Sometimes tired is part of the job." Marina reached out and touched his shoulder lightly. "You're allowed to rest, too." Rowan didn't answer, but his shoulders lifted a fraction, like he'd been given permission he'd never heard before. They continued. Marina's feet still didn't move, but her awareness sharpened. When Rowan tapped her heel, she answered immediately. "Felt it." "Where?" he asked. "Right where it should be." Rowan's pride stayed quiet. Then he handed Caleb a flat resistance band. "Loop it around her foot, gentle." Caleb hesitated. "I'm not trained." Rowan looked up, steady. "You're her husband." Caleb knelt beside Marina and did it. Together they worked small motions. Press, release, breathe, guided by Rowan's calm counting. Most attempts showed nothing, yet Rowan treated each one like it mattered. After half an hour, Marina was sweating lightly, cheeks flushed, breath faster. Caleb offered to stop. "I'm okay," she insisted. "Let's finish." Rowan's face held quiet pride. When they wrapped up, Caleb handed him a paper bag with a sandwich, an apple, and water. Rowan tucked the bag beside his duffel and stood. Marina spoke before he could leave. "Rowan, what happened to your mom?" His body went rigid, then softened. "She got sick fast," he said. "No insurance, just me." "I'm sorry," Marina whispered. Rowan shrugged, too old for 11. "She taught me what I needed." Caleb's voice lowered. "And what's that?" Rowan looked between them. "That healing doesn't always start in hospitals." That evening, Caleb sat by the fireplace with a photo album. Marina rolled beside him, hands trembling from effort. She stared at a picture of herself mid-leap on stage, muscles arched, eyes bright with joy. After a long silence, she asked, "Do you think I'll dance again?" Caleb took her hand. "If there's even a 1% chance," he said, "it's worth fighting for." Marina smiled through wet lashes. "Then we keep fighting." Wind shook the branches outside. Inside, something stubborn and warm kept growing. Hope learning how to stand. The fifth Sunday arrived under a gray sky, and Caleb felt the shift early. Marina refused breakfast, hollow. She didn't look up while he made coffee. In the SUV, she stared forward, hands too still. At Harrington Park, Rowan waited under the oak, sketchpad open, but he wasn't drawing, just staring at a half-finished page. Caleb opened Marina's door. She didn't move. "I don't want to," she said flatly. Caleb froze. "What?" "I don't want to go out there," she repeated. No anger, only defeat. Caleb bent so his face was level with hers. The park felt too quiet. Rowan glanced up from the bench, then looked away, giving space. Caleb kept his voice steady. "Talk to me, please." Marina swallowed, staring past him at the wet court. "I'm tired," Marina whispered. "Tired of trying and failing where everyone can see. Tired of hoping and getting nothing." Caleb's chest tightened. "You don't owe anybody a performance," he said. Marina's breath shook. "But what if today is another nothing?" Caleb leaned closer. "Then today is just a day. We survive it." Across the way, Rowan stood halfway, unsure whether to approach, hands hovering near his duffel. Caleb lifted a hand toward Rowan. "Wait." The boy froze and stayed back. Caleb turned to Marina. "We can leave," he said, "or we can step out for 5 minutes. No promises, just 5 minutes." Marina closed her eyes. The old stage fear showed on her face, unmasked. "I'm not scared of pain," she murmured. "I'm scared of hope." Caleb nodded slowly. "Then we do it scared." He waited, motionless, until she answered. Marina's hands tightened on the armrests. "He doesn't deserve to watch me quit," she said. Caleb shook his head. "Rowan isn't here for a show. He cares." Outside, Rowan pretended to fuss with the rice pack so he wouldn't stare. Caleb lowered his voice. 5 minutes, and if you want to stop, we stop." Marina exhaled, long and shaky. "Okay," she whispered. And Caleb felt relief and dread spike together. Caleb opened the door wider and lifted the blanket higher around Marina's legs. Rowan stayed back, eyes down. Caleb eased the chair into place and rolled her toward the towel. Marina's face stayed blank, braced for disappointment. Rowan knelt, but his hands hovered, waiting for consent. Marina met his eyes. "I'm not sure I can do today." Rowan nodded. "Then we do what you can," he said. "Nothing more." Rowan laid the warm rice pack across Marina's thighs and watched her closely. She didn't flinch. She stared at the gray court, listening to traffic and creaking swings. Rowan spoke softly. "Mom said bodies hate being rushed," he told her. "They shut down when they feel cornered." Marina swallowed. "I feel cornered." Rowan nodded. "Then we widen the room." He guided the slowest stretch yet, pausing when her breath changed. Caleb stood close. Rowan tapped Marina's heel. "Do you feel it?" Marina blinked. "Yes," she said, surprised by her own certainty. "Right there." Rowan's eyes brightened, but he stayed steady. He offered the resistance band to Caleb. Caleb knelt and looped it carefully, hands shaking a little. Together they did one gentle press, then another. Marina grimaced from effort, not pain. Caleb leaned close. "I'm right here," he murmured. Rowan counted softly, keeping rhythm like music. The repetition became its own prayer. Marina's cheeks flushed, sweat gathering at her hairline despite the cold. "Stop?" Caleb asked. Marina shook her head. "No, keep going." Rowan steadied her ankle and guided without forcing. Then, on the next press, Marina's foot trembled, tiny, almost invisible. Caleb froze. Rowan's gaze locked on it. "Did you feel that?" Rowan asked. Marina's eyes went wide. "I think so." Rowan nodded once. "That's you answering." They didn't celebrate. They just kept going. One more press, one more breath, like gentle hands could keep the moment alive. When Rowan finally called time, Marina sagged back, exhausted. Caleb wrapped the blanket tighter, hands trembling too. Rowan packed slowly. Caleb offered the paper bag again, and Rowan accepted. Marina watched him. "You shouldn't be alone," she said. Rowan looked away. "I'm fine," Caleb answered. "No kid out here is fine." Rowan backed away as if distance was safety. Marina's gaze stayed kind. "What you're doing matters," she said. Rowan swallowed. "My mom used to say that." Caleb didn't chase him. He only asked, "Same time next week?" Rowan paused at the edge of the court. A small shrug. "If you're here," he muttered, "I will be." Caleb nodded, and for once it felt like a promise he could keep. Back home, the fireplace crackled while Marina sat close, trembling. Caleb opened the album and stopped at her stage leap photo. Marina traced it with a fingertip. "Today felt different," she whispered. Caleb swallowed. "Because something answered," he said. Marina inhaled. "Then maybe my body isn't gone. Maybe it's far away." Caleb held her hand. "Then we keep calling it back," he replied. Outside, wind rattled the windows, but inside, the warmth held. For the first time in months, the future didn't look like a hallway with locked doors. It looked like a door that might open if they kept knocking. The next Sunday came heavy and gray, and Caleb knew something was wrong early. Marina refused breakfast. Empty. She didn't laugh at his jokes. In the car, her hand sat motionless in her lap. Caleb drove in silence, dread blooming where hope had been growing. At Harrington Park, Rowan was under the oak, sketchpad open, but he wasn't drawing, just staring at a half-finished page. Caleb parked and watched him. Marina didn't reach for her blanket. She didn't look at Rowan. "I don't want to," she said again, quieter. Caleb turned. "Marina." She shook her head, eyes glassy. "I can't do another day where I feel like a fool." Rowan sensed it and made himself small, waiting. Caleb stepped out and opened Marina's door. Cold air rushed in. Marina still didn't move. "What's happening?" he asked, voice steady. "Nothing," she whispered. "That's the problem." Caleb crouched so their eyes were level. Beyond them, Rowan waited by the towel, hands buried in sleeves, trying to be invisible. The park went silent except for wind. Caleb swallowed hard. "Look at me," he said. Marina finally turned, and everything hung there. Yoon answered. Caleb searched Marina's face for anger, but found only fatigue. "You're not a fool," he said. "You've been fighting for 2 years." Marina's throat worked. "And I'm tired of losing," she whispered. Caleb nodded. "Then today we don't chase a win. Today we just show up." He glanced toward Rowan, keeping his distance. 5 minutes, Caleb offered again, softer. Marina breathed in, shaky, and didn't say yes, but she didn't say no either. Silence stretched. Wind tugged at Marina's blanket and rattled the oak's bare branches. Rowan shifted, eyes down, ready to disappear the second he was unwanted. Caleb stayed crouched by Marina's door, steady. "Whatever you choose, I'm with you," he said. Marina's eyes glistened. She stared at the wet court, then at Caleb. "I can't promise anything," she whispered. Caleb answered, "Neither can I. Just look at me." Marina's gaze locked onto his, and for a heartbeat, Caleb saw the old Marina, the one who jumped without knowing the landing, flicker behind her eyes. Rowan waited by the towel, hands hidden in sleeves, pretending he wasn't watching. The park held its breath. Caleb whispered, "One step at a time." Marina swallowed hard, still seated, still undecided. And there, on the edge of quitting and trying again, the story paused. What happened? Marina stared at the dashboard. "I tried before you woke up. I pictured it, focused, pushed as hard as I could, and nothing." Rowan had already started across the lot, towel in hand. When he reached the SUV, he slowed. "Everything okay?" he asked quietly. "She's not feeling it today," Caleb said, voice tight. Marina still wouldn't look up. "I'm tired of trying," she whispered. Rowan stood very still, then eased into a crouch beside the open door, lowering his voice. "You think I never get tired?" Marina's head turned a fraction. "You think I never sat in a shelter watching my mom cry because we couldn't buy her meds? You think I didn't yell when I found her and she wouldn't wake up?" Caleb's throat burned. Marina finally met Rowan's eyes. He swallowed. "I still get tired," Rowan said quietly. "I still get mad. I still get scared. But if I quit, the part of me that still believes in her dies too." Marina's expression shook. "I'm scared," she admitted. Caleb inhaled sharply. It was the first time she'd said those words out loud. Rowan nodded. "Me too. But scared doesn't mean stop. It means we're close to something that matters." The quiet stretched between them like a held breath. Finally, Marina whispered, "Okay." Rowan stepped back while Caleb lifted her carefully into the chair. No one spoke as he pushed her toward the bench. Rowan's tools were already waiting, lined up with careful, almost reverent precision. This time, Rowan moved slower than ever. There was no urgency in his hands, only total presence. The session wasn't about big stretches or chasing range. He simply cradled her feet, asked her to breathe, to notice weight, warmth, air, to remember she still owned those limbs. After 20 minutes, he pressed lightly at her right ankle and watched her face sharpen. "Tell me what you notice," he murmured. Marina's brow tightened. "It's faint," she said slowly. "But yeah, something's there." Rowan nodded. "That's your body remembering." Then it happened. Small, quiet, undeniable. Her right foot twitched, just the toes, a tiny shiver across the towel. Caleb leaned forward, stunned. "Was that?" he rasped. "You saw that, right?" he whispered. His heart was hammering. Rowan didn't gasp or flail. He just smiled, soft and sure. "You did that," he said. Marina clapped both hands over her mouth as tears flooded her eyes. Caleb dropped to one knee beside the chair, gripping the armrest like a lifeline. "Do it again," he pleaded. Marina concentrated. This time her foot stayed still, but she was shaking, laughing, sobbing, all at once. "It was real," she whispered. "It happened." Rowan nodded. "And it'll happen again." Caleb didn't answer. He just stared at the boy, something ancient and heavy shifting inside him, like an old door finally creaking open. That night, Caleb stood on the back porch while cold wind tugged his sleeves. Inside, Marina retold the moment to her older sister, crying and laughing into the phone. Through the kitchen window, Caleb watched Marina's face light and crumple as she described a few inches of movement like a miracle. Rowan had given them more than a twitch. He'd handed back something they thought was dead, possibility. By the time Marina hung up, Caleb had made a decision. Tomorrow, he was making calls. He refused to let that kid vanish back into the dark. Some bridges aren't meant to be admired from far away. Some you're supposed to cross together. Just after sunrise, Caleb opened the front door, coffee in hand, flannel pajama pants still wrinkled from sleep. He didn't know what he expected. But there Rowan was at the edge of the driveway, worn backpack slung over one shoulder, rolled blanket under his arm, like a traveler between worlds. His red beanie was tugged low. His duct-taped sneakers looked rougher in the early light. "Right on time," Caleb said. Rowan didn't smile. "You said, if I needed somewhere," he muttered. "I meant it," Caleb replied, stepping aside. "Come in." Rowan hesitated just a heartbeat, then crossed the threshold. Indoors, the house felt warm and strangely quiet, like it was listening, too. Marina still slept upstairs. Cinnamon and fresh coffee scented the air. Caleb showed Rowan the small guest room and back, a real bed, clean sheets, a simple desk by the window. Rowan set his things down gently, like noise might break the spell. "Stay as long as you need," Caleb said. "No interrogation, no pressure." Rowan nodded once. "Thanks," he whispered, almost too soft to hear. Later that morning, Marina rolled into the kitchen and froze when she saw Rowan at the table, sketching beside a glass of orange juice. "Rowan," she breathed. He glanced up. "Morning, ma'am." Her smile bloomed. "So, you're the footsteps I heard." He shrugged, shy. Didn't want to wake anyone. Marina wheeled closer, touched his hand. "You're not a bother. You're exactly what this place needed." That afternoon they drove back to Harrington Park, not because they were desperate, but because they wanted to. Caleb unloaded the chair while Rowan spread the towel under the oak, their familiar strip of concrete. A few joggers drifted past. A middle-aged nurse walking her dog nodded warmly. The place didn't feel lonely anymore. It felt claimed, like their own little outdoor studio. "Ready?" Rowan asked. Marina nodded. "Let's keep going." They focused on toe curls and ankle rolls, Rowan balancing a small beanbag on her foot. "Push against it," he instructed. She couldn't lift it yet, but she could feel its weight, a challenge resting there, waiting. Caleb joined in, sitting cross-legged on the grass, mirroring Rowan's stretches. "You're bending wrong," Rowan deadpanned. Caleb snorted. "Haven't stretched since Clinton was in office," Caleb muttered. Marina laughed, the sound bright and ridiculous in the chilly air. Rowan's mouth tugged into a grin. About 20 minutes in, Rowan pulled out a soft fabric belt. "I want to try something different," he said. "We'll help her lift both knees." Caleb frowned. "You really think she's ready for that?" Rowan nodded. "She's been ready." They positioned Marina carefully, belt looped under her knees, Caleb gripping one end, Rowan the other. Marina closed her eyes, settled her breathing. "Now," Rowan whispered. Marina exhaled and pushed. Her knees trembled and slowly rose. An inch, maybe less, but they lifted. Caleb stared. "You did that?" Marina's voice shook. "Oh, I did that!" Rowan didn't look away from her legs. "Told you, your body remembers." Marina sagged back in her chair, flushed and glowing, completely spent. Caleb caught her hand and squeezed it tight. Afterward, Rowan sat alone on the bench, sketching while the park thinned. Caleb joined him. "Where'd you sleep before this?" he asked. Rowan hesitated. "Shelter sometimes. Old bus depot, once in a laundry room." Caleb exhaled through his nose. "You've carried more than any kid should." Rowan shrugged, eyes on his drawing. "I had my mom," he said. "She made the hard parts feel less heavy." Caleb studied him. "You ever think about going back to school?" Rowan's pencil paused. "Sometimes I'm not sure I'm built for book stuff," he admitted. Caleb shook his head. "You're good with people. That's rarer." Rowan's gaze lifted. "I want to help folks walk again." Caleb's mouth curved. "Then we'll figure out how to get you there." The sun dipped lower, painting long shadows across the court. From their bench, they watched Marina practicing gentle toe taps on the towel, face set in stubborn concentration. Something steady was forming, not just muscle and movement, but a fragile family. None of them dared name it yet, but they felt it growing. The next Sunday arrived with a hushed kind of tension in the air. Harrington Park seemed quieter, like it knew something important was coming. Rowan felt it while he unrolled the towel and arranged his tools. Rice pack warmed, bands folded, everything in its place. Still, a pressure tugged at his chest, one he couldn't quite label, only feel pulsing under his ribs like a warning. The Sterling's SUV pulled in late, later than usual. Rowan stood instantly. Caleb hopped out and moved fast to the passenger side. Marina didn't reach for the handle. Her face looked drawn, shoulders locked, mouth pressed flat. "She's not up for much," Caleb said abruptly. "Just go easy." Rowan's expression stayed calm. He knelt beside her anyway. "What happened?" he asked, voice low but firm. Marina crossed her arms, eyes fixed on the cracked pavement. "I tried again this morning," she said. "Got up early, warmed my legs, did every trick you showed me, and nothing. Not a twitch, not one hint of movement." Her voice splintered at the edges. "I'm sick of lying to myself." Caleb turned away, jaw flexing. Rowan stayed where he was, motionless, but fully there. "You think you're lying?" Rowan asked. Marina snapped. "I've been chasing shadows, pretending one toe flick means I'm headed back on stage." "It does mean that," Rowan said evenly. "No, Rowan. It means my nervous system glitched once." She gestured at the chair. "I'm still here." Rowan rocked back on his heels. "You're allowed to be furious," he said. "I get furious too, loud furious. Sometimes I screamed into a pillow till my throat burned," Rowan confessed. "But I didn't quit because quitting is when it ends." Marina's eyes shone. "I'm scared," she said. "Scared this is as far as I get." Caleb turned back then, his expression softening. It was the clearest he'd ever heard her name that fear. Rowan leaned closer. "Scared means you are close," he said. "Closer than you've ever been." Marina didn't answer at first. Wind rustled the oak leaves overhead. Finally she whispered, "Then help me try again." Rowan nodded once. That was enough. They started small, gentle massage, warmth at her knees, slow stretches. Rowan barely spoke. Marina barely did either. Caleb knelt whenever needed, lifting where Rowan pointed, his touch steady, not afraid of breaking her. Half an hour drifted by. Then Rowan tapped her right ankle, same cue as always. "Breathe," he said. Marina drew air in deep, focused like a spotlight. Her right foot moved. Not a twitch, not a tiny jerk. A deliberate slide. Fabric scraped against the towel. Maybe an inch, maybe two. Rowan sat back, eyes shining. "You did it," he said, almost reverent. Marina's hand flew to her mouth. "Oh my God," she gasped. Caleb dropped to both knees. "Again," he urged. She tried, and this time the slide was slower but controlled. Her eyes went huge, tears spilling. "I moved it," she breathed. Rowan didn't rush to fill the moment. He let the silence hold while she absorbed it. Caleb bowed his head over her legs, shaking. When he finally looked up, his voice cracked. "We're not chasing shadows anymore." Marina laughed through tears. "I needed that," she said. Rowan's grin finally broke through. "That's why I'm here," he answered. That night the house felt completely different. Less like a recovery ward, more like a home. Marina put on old records. Caleb cooked pasta and somehow didn't burn anything important. Rowan sat at the table sketching again. This time drawing frames of feet in motion. Heel lifting, toes extending, stronger shapes instead of limp outlines. At the sink, Caleb rinsed plates. "Rowan," he called. "Yeah? You ever think about dancing?" Rowan froze. "I've never danced," he said. Caleb smirked. "That might change." He nodded toward the living room, where Marina hummed and stretched. "Because she's going to need a partner someday," Caleb said. A small, disbelieving smile tugged at Rowan's mouth. He ducked his head and went back to drawing, but something in his posture eased. For the first time, he didn't feel like a guest on borrowed time. He felt like he belonged at that table, in that noise, in that messy, loud story. By the 8th Sunday, whispers had started to spread. Not from posts, Marina didn't share online and Caleb guarded their privacy, but word of mouth has its own highway. Someone had seen the woman in the chair move her foot. Someone told a cousin. A nurse mentioned it on break. That morning, when the Sterlings arrived, 2 new families already sat near the oak, watching with careful hope. One family had a lanky 10-year-old boy using a walker. The other, a girl, maybe 11, one hand curled from a mild stroke. Rowan clocked them instantly, nerves twisting in his gut. He glanced at Caleb. "They're not here for a show," Caleb murmured. "They're here because they heard what you can do." Rowan swallowed, then nodded. Responsibility settled on his shoulders like real weight. Marina looked from the kids back to Rowan. "You can help them," she said. Rowan hesitated. "What about your session?" Marina's smile was gentle. "We've had 8 weeks. Let's give them 1. Rowan approached the girl first. She had dark curls and huge anxious eyes. "I'm Rowan," he said, kneeling. Her name was Noelle. "What do you miss most?" he asked. "Jump rope," she whispered. Her dad stood behind her, shoulders tight, thermos clutched like armor. Rowan used the same towel setup, the same warm rice pack, the same calm tone. He showed Noelle's mom how to massage behind the knee, how to test response with the tennis ball. Then he moved to the boy, Darius with the walker, and coached his parents on light band work, on speaking encouragement without pity. All the while, Marina watched from her chair, arms folded, pride written across her face. Caleb stood behind her, hands tucked in his pockets. "They believe him," Marina murmured. Caleb nodded. "He believes in them first." When Rowan finished, he returned, looking apologetic. "Sorry I skipped your work," he said. Marina shook her head. "You didn't skip anything. You multiplied it." "They needed you," Rowan said. Marina's gaze softened. "You gave them something their specialists couldn't," she told him. "Hope that doesn't come printed on glossy brochures." Rowan looked away, but Caleb saw it. The subtle lift in his spine, the way he sat taller. He was stepping into something bigger than just one family's story, and for the first time he seemed to feel that too. That evening, Marina watched the last autumn leaves drift past the back deck while Rowan flipped through a worn community guidebook inside. Caleb had highlighted GED programs, healthcare courses, anatomy classes. "You serious about this?" Rowan asked. Caleb looked up from the stove. "About helping you find a track?" "Very." Rowan traced a line. "Been a long time since school felt like it fit me." "Maybe it didn't then," Caleb said. "But now, different story." Rowan lifted his eyes. "You really think I could become someone who helps people for a living?" Caleb didn't hesitate. "You already are," he said. "We're just giving the world a way to see it." Just then, Marina rolled in. "You guys want to see something?" she asked, a mischievous glint cutting through her exhaustion. Both of them turned. Marina didn't answer with words. She parked beside the counter, planted her hands on the edge, and pushed. Caleb lunged automatically, but she waved him off. "I've got it," she breathed. Her legs shook. Her arms trembled, but slowly, agonizingly, she stood. Rowan's eyes went wide. Then she took one step and collapsed into Caleb's arms, laughing and sobbing. Rowan stood frozen, then edged closer. Marina reached out, grabbed his hand, and squeezed like she was anchoring herself to both of them. "You said we'd get here," she whispered. Rowan shook his head. "No, you got here." That night, nobody mentioned therapy or charts. They ate too much pasta, ruined the garlic bread, and cranked the music louder than any doctor would recommend. From her chair, Marina danced with her arms. Slow spins, graceful arcs, tracing the air like echoes of old choreography. Caleb snapped a picture, unable to stop smiling. Rowan didn't dance, but he grinned so hard his cheeks hurt. For once, the house wasn't defined by what they'd lost. It pulsed with what might still be possible, buzzing with goofy jokes and off-key singing. 9 Sundays. That's how long it had been. 9 weeks of rice packs and whispered cues, of muscles quivering with effort, of tears that meant defeat 1 minute and victory the next. 9 Sundays since a boy in a red beanie had stepped from the margins and turned a quiet, grieving household upside down. But this Sunday felt different, charged in a deeper, bone-deep way. Rowan sensed it before the SUV pulled up. The air was still, the light warm and golden like late afternoon, though it wasn't. Families gathered near the oak, 5 now, kids with braces, parents in folding chairs, a local pastor named Reverend Collier handing out bagels and cocoa. When Caleb and Marina arrived, Rowan saw one more thing. Marina sat taller, unwrapped from her usual layers. She wasn't bundled in blankets or gloves. She wore a fitted navy blouse, dark jeans, ankle boots, no hiding. Determination settled over her features like makeup. She met Rowan's gaze head-on. "You ready?" he asked. "I think we all are," she answered. Caleb rolled her onto a mat taped at center court. Rowan knelt in front, hands steady, voice dropping into that calm register everyone recognized. "Same plan as before," Rowan said. "We help you stand. You decide the rest." Caleb moved behind her, hands braced gently under her arms. Rowan positioned her knees, feet, hips exactly where they needed to be. Marina inhaled deeply and closed her eyes. "Okay," Rowan whispered. "On 3. She nodded. 1, 2, 3. Caleb lifted. Rowan steadied, and Marina, she rose. Her thighs quivered, her arms shook, but she was on her own, 2 feet. The small crowd fell silent. No murmurs, no shifting, just wind stroking the oak leaves overhead. Marina's eyes fluttered open. "I'm standing," she whispered like she didn't trust the words. Rowan blinked hard. "Yeah," he said. "You are." Behind her, Caleb held his breath like exhaling might break everything. Slowly, carefully, he eased his hands away. Marina wobbled, but stayed up. Caleb stepped back, palms hovering. Rowan shifted just a little farther, giving her space. "You've got this," he said. Marina took a step, then another, and because she was Marina, stubborn, fearless, born to move, she went for a third. On that third step, her knees buckled, and she pitched forward into Caleb's chest. He caught her on instinct, arms locking around her. His hands shook as he held her, forehead pressed to hers. "You did it," he whispered, voice breaking. "You really did." Marina laughed and cried at once. "We did," she said. "If you think little Rowan deserves a like for never quitting, now's the time to tap it, because he didn't just show up. He stayed." Rowan stood a few feet away, unmoving, watching everything with wide, shining eyes. His fists were clenched, not from fear, but from awe so huge it barely fit inside him. Marina turned in his direction. "You promised we'd try," she said. "That's all you ever guaranteed." Rowan gave a small, crooked grin. "Trying's the thing that gets you there," he replied. The rest is just time. Nobody rushed to leave the park that afternoon. People lingered in little clusters. Some hugged, some cried, some bowed their heads and prayed. Rowan sat on the bench, sketchpad beside him, too full to draw. He didn't say much, he never did, but he didn't need to. They'd all seen what mattered. A woman stand and walk, after being told for years that she never would. That night, Caleb dried dishes at the sink while Rowan poured himself a bowl of cereal. Late-night comfort, clinking softly. Marina lounged nearby, legs on a pillow, still glowing. "You know you flipped our world," Caleb said, not turning. Rowan didn't reply at first. Caleb set the towel down, crossed to him, and rested a hand on his shoulder. "My wife walked today," he said. "Not because of some miracle machine. Not because of a new drug trial, because a kid with duct-taped sneakers kept showing up." Rowan looked up slowly. "That's what my mom would have done," he said. Caleb's throat tightened. "I wish she could have seen this." Rowan gave a faint, certain smile. "She did," he murmured. "I figure she sees all of it now." Caleb nodded, blinking fast. "Rowan," Caleb said quietly, "you're going to change a lot of lives." Rowan stirred his cereal. "I already am," he answered. Not bragging, not joking, just stating something plain. And Caleb knew he was right. Some people never chase spotlight or headlines. They don't own capes, don't deliver speeches. They just keep showing up, again and again, until the ground under them starts to change. They keep believing when everyone else has run out of faith. They hold that belief for other people too, like a lantern in a blackout. Sometimes they arrive in pressed suits and polished shoes. Sometimes they show up as a skinny 11-year-old with a red beanie and shoes held together by tape. Either way, what they carry is heavier and holier than any prescription pad or machine. They carry belief and the stubborn, quiet love that refuses to give up on broken bodies, broken spirits, or broken systems. That love doesn't always shout. It rarely trends, but it rewrites endings. It turns never into maybe and maybe into today. And every now and then, if you're lucky, it's delivered by a kid like Rowan, who just refuses to stop trying. Hope can be borrowed until it becomes your own. If you are in your 60s or 70s, you may know exactly how Caleb felt. Exhausted by doctor's visits, tired of new programs, scared to hope one more time. After Marina's car accident, 2 long years passed with wheelchairs, waiting rooms, and polite phrases like, "We'll see." That kind of slow heartbreak wears a person down. Many older Americans have walked that same hallway, through VA clinics and rehab centers, when that skinny boy in the red beanie stopped them in the Denver parking lot and said, "Sir, I can get your wife walking again." Caleb didn't just hear a child. He heard one more chance to be disappointed. But Marina, who had lost so much, still had enough courage to say, "What's one more hour? That is the first lesson for us." Sometimes hope comes to us on borrowed legs. In certain seasons of life, we don't have the strength to believe, so we lean on someone else's belief. A spouse, a grandchild, a neighbor, even a kid with duct-taped shoes and warm rice packs. Hope does not always roar in like a marching band. Sometimes it shows up quiet and practical, with a tennis ball, a towel, and hands that refuse to give up. It can feel safer to stay numb, to say, "Nothing will ever change." But numbness is a kind of death long before the heart stops beating. Marina's choice to try again, even shaking with fear, reminds us that as long as we are breathing, hope is allowed to knock on the door. Families are built, not just born. For many Americans over 65, family has taken different shapes over the years. Some of you raised children in small houses with one bathroom. Others watched loved ones drift away through divorce, illness, or distance. Caleb and Marina started as a traditional couple, a successful businessman and a gifted ballerina. The crash could have turned their home into a quiet, separate kind of grief, the kind where each person suffers alone. Instead, a boy with no steady address ended up sleeping in their guest room. Rowan didn't arrive with a social worker or a polished resume. He showed up with a backpack, a rolled blanket, and skills his mother taught him in a shelter clinic, helping veterans who had nowhere else to go. Little by little, the Sterlings' home changed. The kitchen smelled like cinnamon and coffee again. They argued about how long to heat the rice pack in the microwave. The back deck filled with ladder over burned garlic bread and off-key music. Then, other families appeared at Harrington Park. A boy with a walker, a girl whose hand had curled after a stroke, parents clutching thermoses the way some people clutch rosaries. Under that rusty basketball hoop, a new kind of family formed, held together not by last names, but by shared fear and shared courage. Many older adults know how painful it is when blood relatives are far away or already gone. Rowan's story reminds us that we can still grow chosen family in the most ordinary places: a city park, a church hall, a clinic waiting room. Sometimes the people who steady us in our weakest moments are the ones we met last, not first. Small steps still change the world. If you grew up in an America of big headlines and big heroes, moon landings, famous generals, civil rights leaders, it is easy to think that only huge events matter. But in this story, nobody passes a new law or discovers a miracle drug. No reporter shoves a microphone in Rowan's face. The change begins with the smallest movement: a toe twitching on a cold towel, an ankle sliding an inch across faded concrete. For someone who once leaped across a stage under bright theater lights, that inch could have felt like an insult. Instead, surrounded by her husband and a boy who refused to quit, Marina chose to celebrate it as a beginning. Older Americans understand this better than most. You have seen how tiny choices, putting a few dollars into savings, calling a lonely neighbor, forgiving a child who failed, shape whole decades. Rowan's steady, stubborn care turned 9 ordinary Sundays into something holy. A woman who was told never took 3 trembling steps in ankle boots while autumn leaves drifted around her. A broken-hearted husband found himself laughing over pasta again. A homeless boy began to believe he might someday earn a license to match the work he was already doing. And around them, other families picked up tennis balls and resistance bands, learning how to keep trying when their own hope ran thin. The world did not change all at once, but on that old basketball court, never quietly became maybe, and maybe became today. For those of us with gray hair and deep memories, that is the invitation. Do not ignore the small movement, the inch of progress, the quiet act of showing up. In God's time and in our own, those inches become miles. Friends, hearing how Marina took those first shaky steps and how little Rowan kept showing up with nothing but warm rice packs, duct-taped sneakers, and a stubborn heart, what does it stir up in you? Have you ever had a moment where progress was only an inch, but it changed your whole outlook? Or a person who refused to give up on you when you were ready to quit? Share your story in the comments, hit the like button, and subscribe to my YouTube channel so we can keep walking this road of hope and healing together, one Sunday at a time.